Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector Colonas and Mike LaRosa.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another weekly recap. I am Hector Colonas, and once again, I'm joined by Mike LaRosa. Mike, how are you in week 49?
I'm in the holiday spirit, can you tell? It's one last mad dash to the end of the year. And so the only thing keeping me cheery with endless sales calls is a little holiday spirit. But I can't believe we've made it this far. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in New York next week.
Yes. And on that note, if anyone who's listening or watching or reads the newsletter is in New York next week, hit us up, podcast@thisweekincoworking.com. We'd love to see if we can bump into you, maybe get a high five, get a selfie, whatever it is. We just want to meet you and say thanks for listening. So if you are in New York next week, hit us up. So you said it was the end of the year, and normally at the end of the year in co-working, everything's quieting down and everyone's getting ready for holidays. But we had to go through like 100 plus links this week to get it to like the 30-ish that we shared. And there's some pretty big stories, even now, week 49 out of week 52. We have got a lot to run through, but we've picked a couple of them. We'll dive into them. Mike, should we start over in the Baltics with something that I haven't seen in the co-working world before? What do you think?
Yeah, we've got some bonds in the Baltics, that's for sure. So there was a LinkedIn post shared by Coworking Europe with some news that there's an operator, Workland, that's going to be launching a 2.5 million euro bond. What's interesting is that it's not so interesting in the fact that this is a typical real estate type of transaction to raise additional funds. They're just leveraging the value that's in their existing real estate portfolio. What is interesting and why it's included in This Week in Co-working is because it's the first time either of us remember or even hearing of something of this nature being led by the actual operator of the co-working brand. So I think if I were to plant a flag in this news item, it would be that this might be the start of a trend, much like others we've seen, where operators are starting to think more like real estate owners and operators rather than just managing a co-working business.
Really interested to see how it's gonna roll out. As you said, it's 2.5 million euros. It is going to be done in tranches. The first tranche is going to be 1.5 million euros with plans to raise as and when they need throughout 2025. I think they put a 10% yield, 10.5% yield on that bond. So it's tied to their property values as well. An interesting way to raise capital now as the capital markets are starting to shift around, hey, co-working isn't a zero value flooring.
Exactly. If I was an independent operator myself and I was looking at ways to expand or different strategies, as with anything in the real estate industry, it's a case study type market. People will do it if someone else has done it first. And so this is now a great option and a resource that people can turn to as an alternative, solution to, how they want to expand.
Yep. So this is pretty much an indie operator, but there are no newcomers to the industry. They are operating 14 properties across Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So they have got a P&L to show. They have got experience to bring to the game. It's going to be really interesting to see how some of those larger multi-location networks, if they do something similar or do a more traditional fundraise for expansion. Because everyone we've spoken to is looking at expansion next year. It's going to be interesting to see how the capital markets play with that, especially as interest rates start to come down. There's going to be more fresh powder or capital to be deployed into more commercial real estate type plays. So it's going to be really an interesting one to watch. And thank you for planting that flag. Let's see if a trend swells around it.
Next up, thank you, Hector, for allowing me to indulge this one, was a really great post from Coworking Whistler that was shared originally in a Facebook group. I think it was the Coworking Operators Alliance group, basically talking about how they doubled their on-demand instant revenue just by simply implementing software. So full transparency, in this scenario, the software that we're speaking of was Proximity, but this is an application or a lesson learned that can be applied to any type of software out there, because so many owner operators that I've been talking to recently tell me, oh, it's just too much. I don't have the money. My margins are so thin. I don't really need it. I have this workaround. I have that workaround. But I always hear, but then it doesn't do that, sir. But oh, it's okay, but I can do that. So I know I'm totally speaking your language, Hector, from the world of Syncaroo, but I think it's just once again a really good gentle reminder. And it just so happens that Hector and I both work for Flex Workspace software, is that don't underestimate or don't miscalculate what that spend is. It's not necessarily a cost of doing business or a hard cost. It might actually be more of an opportunity cost as to what are you missing by not having some of these things. So what are you missing by not having a software to manage your space and access a membership? Or what are you missing by not leveraging a solution like Syncaroo to update your listings and save you the time and make sure your inventory is searchable in all the platforms? So shameless little plug, but I think that's a good lesson to share.
I mean, it's absolutely a valid lesson, but it's also a lesson for the software companies, right? Everyone is competing for those same folks we spoke about in the previous story, that multi-location network. But there are an increasing number, I would say far larger number of indie operators who've built fairly good cash flow positive businesses that do not use technology. They are looking for something that to take them from that, like they've done 0 to 1. They now want to get from 1 to 10, right? And that's where the software is going to come in. It's all around that idea of we're trying to educate the enterprise co-working custom operators on why this widget is better than this widget, or this little setting, or this AI tool is better than this AI tool. But out of the, 70,000 co-working spaces, the large ones are only like 50% of that, right? There's an entire market out there who have not got technology. They're still running on Excel. They still have a kind of a whiteboard with which offices are available, and that's how they run their business. And they're going to get to a point when they want to hire more people or expand or do things like that, and they're going to need tech. So there's this golden opportunity there to marry the great solutions that we built for the entire industry for the indie operators and lifting them up. And I think we're going to see so many more 4 to 8 location networks by the end of next year. Because this is where, going back to the capital thing, capital is looking at co-working and being like, oh, this is something that's valuable. It's a repeatable business model. We spent the last 4 years with VCs pouring trillions of dollars into SaaS, which is now being eaten away by AI. But what they loved about it is it's a repeatable subscription business. Co-working is a repeatable subscription business. And you cannot have an AI generate a desk and a wall and a Wi-Fi. So it's a more stable subscription business than software. And that is mind-blowing to folks in the capital markets. And you're starting to see that shift away. Just another thing that we saw in a tangent to this is over the last year, PE firms, the last 2 years, PE firms have been buying up car washes across the country here in the US. Like mom and pop car washing companies have vanished. They've all been acquired into this PE arms race. But they're not buying it because car washes are necessarily good businesses. They're buying them to create subscription car wash packages that they can sell to everyone who has a car. So once again, looking for subscription-based businesses that are not tied to software. They're tied to real things that people really need to do, and co-working is there. So think about your company as a subscription business and not just a real estate business, and all of these things open up.
Couldn't have said it better myself, although a few people that I think talked and touched on this that made me think of are the folks that joined you in our most recent podcast episode about marketing, right? So a lot of people initially just only look at the first tier of things that can be impacted by software, like door access, or you're just billing or your membership management. But then if you do a deeper dive, if you are tracking the different types of inventory that you are selling or what the different price points are, you then are empowered to have more intel and research to then inform your marketing decisions, right? Because I think we're coming on the cusp of a breakthrough software enabled in that for a while, Google ads or Facebook ads or just anything have always just been like too far or too expensive for a lot of operators. But if you have a little bit better detail and information as to what you are doing, it enables you to be a little bit more powerful with that marketing spend. So we encourage you to take a look at how you can leverage software to just grow that business and give you a little bit of a break yourself.
Absolutely. And just picking up what you said earlier, software is not a cost center, it's a revenue driver. right? Think of it as how you're going to use software to generate more revenue, make your teams more efficient. And that's going to allow you to think a little bit more openly about the software you're using, and definitely go back, listen to the episode we dropped this week with Kat, Ruben, and Taylor. We go deep dive into marketing trends from across the year, but also what they're all looking at for next year. I'm not going to rehash all of that here. Hop into the podcast feed, twic.co/listen. It's right there for you to listen on any of your platforms or wherever you're listening to this.
And as we continue our conversation about software, the next story on our list here is a platform that I've been a big admirer of for a while, Hubli, Ireland based, but now also operated in both EMEA and New York. They are an interesting twist on aggregation because they come from the hotel meeting room side, and they've always been plugged in with corporate event planners, meeting planners, internal event planners, where a lot of the other aggregators we see in the marketplace for Flex Workspace, like the Liquid Spaces, the Desk Passes, the Desanas, the Gables, the list goes on, they all are selling into traditional corporate real estate or occupier services, or they're being resold by brokers. And so Hubly announced they've always, in my opinion, been light years ahead as it relates to integrating with large enterprise tools. And so they just announced another integration with an Oracle owned product under the Amadeus brand that basically allows travelers to book their flights, their hotels, and their rental cars or car hires alongside group hotels, internal offices that they can list via Hubly, as well as meeting venues and other workspaces they have on that platform. This was like the biggest news for me from like my corporate travel nerd side. I was like, this was a major update. And so my takeaway is it's been very interesting to see and be a part of it for a little while. The collision of corporate real estate and internal meeting planners or corporate travel, because we see less office space being used in its traditional form and more office space being used for meetings and events. So which department's going to win out in this battle? Who knows? I think HR is somewhere stuck in the middle there.
Yep. And it's a really interesting one because it actually touches on three undercurrent trends. First, the fact that what Phil brought up in that podcast episode with Paul Kirshner of local business trips and thinking of Workspace as a business expense in a travel lens. The second is the way people will book meeting rooms, offices, etc. 5 years from now is not going to look like what it looks like today. The interfaces, how they engage with it, how they touch, how they think about booking is not going to be go to a website, search for your city, look at the pictures of a desk. It's just not going to be like that. So that's the second trend. And the third trend is the fact that integrations are going to be key. Like, this is not Hubly giving a widget into another system. This is making Hubly completely invisible and be forming part of that backbone that's going to enable your spaces to serve hundreds of use cases you haven't even thought about because you've put your place in a position that you can service those customers. And it's just really three huge waves coming together. So congrats to Ciara and the whole team at Hubly. As you said, they have been innovators in the travel and meeting room space. They used to be called Meeting Booker, rebranded to Hubly. Fantastic history. So hop over to the newsletter, click on their brand profile, and just look at the things they've been doing over the last 700 plus days. It's a fantastic testament to the fact that you can work in co-working or with co-working, but not be a co-working platform. So love the story and love everything that the team is doing there.
And speaking of co-working platforms, as we continued this software-centric heavy episode this week, I think that you've got some big news to share yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely. So folks who may be new to the podcast or new to the newsletter or only know about me from this newsletter, back in 2013, I founded a company with a really simple but pretty audacious goal. What happens if we could make the price of a co-working membership negligible based on packing it with discounts and products and services from other companies, so that if you spend $100 on a desk, you're getting $1,000 back from all these added services. And that company was called Included.co. I led that for a long time. It's how I landed up meeting folks like you, Mike. It's what brought me over to the US, kind of lead expansion into the US market. But this week we announced that after a search for a new partner that would allow me to focus more on this week in co-working at Synkaroo and less on running the Perks program, we were looking for a partner that could match our goal of making every dollar spent worth 10 times more in co-working. And we put together a package. We worked with this company. They called BuiltFirst. Aaron over at BuiltFirst will join us from the podcast at some point in the near future to dig into exactly what it all looks like. But the deal is like this. Included perks will go away and it will be replaced by this program called BuiltFirst for co-working. BuiltFirst is a perks and partnership platform used by VC firms, banks, large kind of groups of businesses. And it's going to be, they put together a co-working exclusive offer, really well priced. I think it starts around $1,000 a year and you get a free month as well. And from day one, each of your members gets $250,000 of perks on day one. And that's only from about 20-ish of their vendors. They have 200 vendors in there. So if you are looking for a way to reward your members in the new year, tie this into kind of your upselling capabilities, tie it into closing more deals in the new year, this is definitely something worth checking out. Go read the article. I also share some of my notes about how you could think about this, or hop over to included.co and request access today. It's available. Operators have started signing up. I'm really excited about the next generation of member benefits. And I'm happy that Aaron and the team joined in and said that they would take the flag to the top of the mountain.
Yeah, big congrats, Hector. I'm a big believer in the potential that still exists in this growing market, and it's a testament to the grit that you've got for all the different projects you work on. But yeah, I foresee, I'm going to say it now, I think 2025 could be the year that perks, loyalty, different types of partnerships really start getting some attention in this industry. And that's not just because it's following the hotel business model.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw it with kind of the WeWork, Yardi, et cetera deal, right? They're thinking, how do we become more like a hotel alliance and benefits and rewards? We've been doing rewards at Included since 2013. So we've seen that trajectory, but we're also seeing the fact that co-working or flex space has become, we're seeing this rush to quality. We're seeing this shift of, okay, cool. I can use spillover desk to what else do I get? What else can you give me? And it actually touches on an article we didn't think we would discuss today, but there was a piece that was looking at this, whether you should be giving brokers an extra 10% commissions for closing deals by the end of the year and whether that lines up the incentives correctly. But what we're seeing is tenants or members want to get the best deal long-term from an operator. And so I'm more inclined, if I was looking for an office space, I'm like, okay, I got these 3 offers. This one comes with $250K in perks. This one doesn't, but this one is also paying the broker an extra 10% for me to go there. That sways up my decision-making. I think brokers have to be a little bit more transparent around what do they get with each membership, but also what their incentives are, right? If you're pushing me towards a location because you're getting extra commission, can I trust that's the best interest for me, my company, my employees? Like, it just murkies the water. And I think I've been on the soapbox before. I see you nodding along, Mike. I'm not going to do that.
No, I'm nodding because this morning I was actually listening to the Miles to Go podcast, and one of the co-hosts there works in partnerships at Built. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you live in a city and you're a renter, chances are you've heard of Built, which is a loyalty perks program for renters that also comes with a co-branded credit card. And everything that you just said, Hector, is literally almost word for word what Richard was describing, in that for apartment building owners, if they're giving away an incentive of 1 free month rent on a lease to try to get it signed, that's $3,000, let's say, for that 1 month. What else can they offer, like bonus built points or discounts on this or discounts on that? So it very much touches, because real estate is real estate, that there really are no differences, just nuances between the products. And so as more building owners start entering into flex and get more competitive, like, I think it's a solid discussion to be had as to the solution is not just to ratchet up the commission for the brokers, because we saw when WeWork offered 100% commission, those people still left eventually, right? Like there was no loyalty to that. But if they knew they were getting other things, like basically it's just what can you do that's more creative than just straight up, like I said, I think 2025 is going to be big for any type of partnership, perks, loyalty, whatever you name it in this space. So just, I would say, keep your eyes open, keep your ears peeled, and just keep reading This Week in Coworking. Shameless plug.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking at our undercurrent trends that we're investigating for next year. I think, yeah, we might have to push this in at some point because it is that emerging trend that could change up a lot of the positioning, the marketing, the way we talk about co-working. So let's put a pin in that and we'll get back to it in the new year. But on a lighter note, we actually saw a funny post. I'm going to say funny because we haven't seen it and I haven't seen the pilot yet, but Disney Plus Spain is actually doing a Silicon Valley type show based in a co-working space, based in these characters that I'm assuming are stereotypical to Spanish co-working spaces. We haven't seen it, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that Disney Plus will release it here in the US as well so we can see it. But if anyone knows anyone at Disney Plus or Disney in Spain, and they can arrange to put us in touch, we would love to organize like a global watch party for the co-working world to just look at it, hopefully with subtitles, unless I'm going to have to get someone to translate it for me, just to look at how close they got. And if they ever went to a co-working space before they wrote the script, maybe they wrote the script in a co-working space, because that would be hysterical.
So if you've ever had the opportunity to witness what the creative process is like, the writer's room is like a co-working space, right? So you've got people coming and going at different hours, and you've got different conversations and people working on A storylines and B storylines and different arcs. I don't know. I've worked on some projects where even these bungalows on studios are just co-working spaces for each production, right? The showrunner has their own office, there's meeting rooms, the teams are in there. So I think there's been a lot of talk about the potential for this in the industry by a lot of people for a while. I'm super excited because I think the magic of sitcoms, I think, is that they work in any language, right? Because at the end of the day, it's that shared human experience, and co-working really is a global language, right? It's not one country specific. So I think if it's good enough for Disney Plus Spain, I hope that we can get it too, because I know there's a lot of other that I've seen on other platforms developed in other countries that are available that are just as good, right? Although the subtitle, we'd have to work on our Duolingo. But anyway, this was not a Disney themed outfit specifically for this episode. Those of you that know me know that this is just a normal day. It's Disney everywhere. But I was super excited to see that they were doing this and that someone's doing it. So we'll have to wait and see when it premieres.
Yep. As you said, there's been a bunch of foreign language, I say foreign language as someone who's sitting in America right now, shows that have done really well on other platforms. Look at Squid Games,
Games.
Yeah. There's so many, and even movies that are released in just subtitles and they were massive hits. So we're rooting for it. We can't wait to see it. Anyone at Disney, hit us up, podcast at thisweekincoworking.com. Happy to do a premiere there. And of course, we'll let everyone know in the email. Coming back to New York though, Mike, there was a few articles this week talking about this new, it's not really new, but it's suddenly become known, or people are suddenly aware of it. And it's called the WSA, or the Water Street Associates. And this used to be the old AIG New York headquarters. I can't even describe what this place looks like, what they're doing. The fact that it's called Workspace in there somehow, like, just go to the newsletter. Do yourself a favor, whatever you're doing now. If you're driving, pull over. We don't want you whistling donkeys. Pull over, go to the newsletter, go down to the story about AIG's New York headquarters, click on the link, and just look at the photos. I don't think I've seen a co-working space. I've seen some pretty high class and swanky member clubs, but I don't think I've seen anything like this. So definitely have a look at that and then send us in a comment on the podcast or via email and let us know what you think. Is it over the top? Is it like targeted at the Beyoncés of the world who is mentioned in the article? Or is this just New York? Like, I would love to hear what people think. I don't even know what I think. I just love it.
I couldn't believe that I'd never heard of this until, I think it was last week. 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 I think it was last we the Curbed article hit our submissions, I was like, holy cow, how did I miss this? If for anyone that is not immediately already looking at this article as they listen to this podcast, it's like Art Basel met like Burning Man met a WeWork co-working. So it's like co-working, but it's got like these crazy art installations. Some of them just art, some of them actual functional. I believe there's like this big meeting bed with huge toes at the end of it, at the foot of it. But yeah, I think that it's what power in branding, because that building was so famous for being AIG headquarters. That entry was photographed on nightly news and daily, right? Everyone knew it. Now it's something completely different, right? And I just think it was so cool. It's got a recording studio, it's got a pop-up restaurant, it's got retail, it's got everything. I think it's probably what Adam Newman would have dreamed of, right? Of some like high luxury type version of We Live or We Work. So most definitely, guys, it's like a space out of your dreams and Architectural Digest all at the same time. Very cool. Very cool to look at. And they're successful. They're filling up, right? I don't know if there's a waiting list. It didn't go into detail, but there's most definitely demand for it, which I guess just speaks to the lack of diversity of space down in that part of Manhattan.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and it is filling up. I've heard that it's got a lot of members in there. I've heard that there's also a lot of artists and creatives and kind of producers. So it's just a really different group of people. So just definitely something that we're watching, and like I want to get over there as soon as I can.
And check it out. So it'd be a fun day co-working. I think that's all the news that we have from this weekly recap, but anything you want to leave the audience with before we jump out?
Yeah. So the one thing is definitely go back, listen to the podcast last week or this week with Kat, Ruben, and Taylor, and look out for next week's podcast, which is all the way out of Australia. Again, we talked to Tashi Dorji about what he's seen on the landlord operator co-working side there. Some fantastic things that I didn't even think about until he articulated it in a specific way. So definitely listen to that. And we'll be back in your podcast feed same time next week.
Have a good one.